Hey everyone, it's Chris, aka The Dark Wall. Just wanted to do a quick sort of spur of the moment video on the mid-chapter patch. I got about maybe like a quarter of the way through reading it, and I kind of had a lot to say about it, so I thought, let's just go ahead and record something real fast. Not using my little VTuber avatar I usually do. This is just sort of, as I said, a spur of the moment sort of deal. But yeah, let's get into it. Alright, so first off, we have the Executioner Balance update. So what they basically did here is two things. They made it so that he recovers quicker from using Punishment of the Damned attack. It's 0.5 seconds quicker, which, I mean, that's okay. From what I saw, I didn't actually play the PTB, but some people said that it was fairly small but kind of nice, but they also gave him a larger penalty. Now, first thing I want to look at is they made him move at 3.6 meters per second for a second. So he's going to lose a little bit of distance as he's coming out of Trails of Them. That's if you cancel your power. Now, in the PTB version, hopping back real quick, he moved at 4.4. Now, it's worth noting that when you put your sword in the ground, you always move at this 3.6 value. So now you're basically going to get double slowdown when you fake your power at a pallet, which I don't think should necessarily be completely removed. And honestly, it's not the worst change in the world. It's kind of just, I feel like if they were going to nerf this, they should have buffed this a little bit, because the recovery, the 0.5 seconds isn't necessarily anything to write home about. And if you want people to be taking risky shots, that is not going to be a big enough carrot to make it a smart idea. So I feel like instead of giving us a bigger carrot, they're just trying to fuck you more when you try to make the loop. So I think it's a rather common yet frustrating thing with behavior where they're exercising poor judgment, more or less making a somewhat good but not even close to top tier killer weaker because they want to suit the irritations of their player base, which is understandable, but they don't seem to exercise enough care in maintaining that character as an effective character. Because I think they don't appreciate that no-win situation that he can have at some loops. It's not as universal as some people act, but that's a large part of what makes him even able to occupy that upper mid-ish spot that he has. So I question their judgment pretty significantly here. Trails of Torment, they changed it from the PTB design where now it only lasts until you hurt somebody, which it's a little disappointing, but I mean, it could still be fun, whatever. This is another example of bad judgment on behavior. Force Penance broken status effect just lasts longer. The problem with Force Penance was never that the status effect didn't last long enough. It was that the application of the status effect was extremely situational, and as such, it was a very big dice roll as to if you would ever get any use out of this during a match. And also at the same time, it was entirely up to the survivors. I guess the only meaningful way that you have of facilitating protection hits, at least with some reliability, is if you were to camp. So I mean, I guess maybe behavior wants to buff camping. I don't know. Blood Pact, it could be good. Could be okay. I don't really have anything to say on that one. It just makes you 7% faster when you're in 16 meters of each other. I do think that the old version of Blood Pact was pretty underwhelming, so if this turns out good for them. Let's see. Excuse me. Any means necessary. I don't really have any issue with this. They make it faster to pick up the pallets. The issue with any means necessary was more that most loops in the game are either so good that the killer doesn't continue the chase until they break the pallet, or they're kind of forgettable. So I mean, like, the more mediocre loops I think that any means necessary is going to be good at. And the good thing is that the newer maps actually have a lot of the mid-strength loops, so there may be some opportunities to use this. It could be decent. For the people awards blood points, okay, that's great. Thanatophobia, another, I feel like I need a behavior has no sense of judgment with the game they've been working on for 4 years counter. Thanatophobia no longer affects healing speed, and its penalties have been increased to 5%. That's the relevant one, tier 3. So, problem here is that Thanatophobia is already a very underwhelming perk. Very underwhelming. It's extremely questionable as to if it's even worth running. there's basically two characters that people think Thanatophobia could be an okay idea with. That's Plague and Legion. Now, this is a buff for Plague. Plague doesn't give a crap about this because no one cares about healing speed. You cleanse versus Plague. Although now the don't cleanse meta is sort of questionable because she has that pool at the start. So even that is less of a clear choice for Plague. This is really more or less a Legion nerf, if anything. So they get 5% slower gens, but the half of the affected area of Thanatophobia is removed. So you're getting 1%. Well, we'll be generous and say 4% if you get everyone injured. So in this situation, at its best, you're getting 4 extra percent, but you're losing half of your application area. You're getting a 25% bonus for 50% less of an area affected. So it's a pretty underwhelming. It is a nerf. It's a nerf because they basically said the reason they did this was because survivors didn't like when they had a no-win scenario, which I think is bullshit anyways. They basically said, oh, it took too long to heal, but you can't get any momentum because you're always unhealthy and everything takes forever. It's really not that big of a debuff. And it's like you just start healing people when you have like maybe 2 people injured. You don't even ever have to work through the debuff. You just heal each other up. So I really feel like that line of reasoning was weak. It feels like they have a lot of like rank 20 players, or not rank 20, but like people who are shit at the game and their balancing team, and they complain about things that they should easily be able to deal with and they're just not good enough to do it. So instead they implement them as game changes. And Thanatophobia seems like a solid example of that. The fact that the fan base gave such a huge backlash to the fact that you're removing half of a mediocre, and keep in mind, this is a low tier perk. Not a lot of killers use this. The killers that do use this, it's questionable if it's worth it. But they still saw fit to remove half of its effective area for such a pathetic increase. It is the crown jewel of people who say behavior doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. Just being rude. I am very disappointed by that change. So that's definitely the annoying one, that they didn't have the judgment to improve that. Cruel Limits is another bad judgment on behavior's part. They just gave it more range. The issue with the problem with Cruel Limits is that it doesn't block off most options. You can vault a drop pallet, you can drop a pallet, and it only applies 5 times at a match, and you have to be in a crucial position during that match. It just doesn't give you enough. A lot of the time, there's not even a vault that a survivor needs to use within this. So this is something that, like, I feel like they could have done it so that it was like maybe any pallets and vaults within the range of the generator, or because I mean now they have the mechanics with Blood Favor, the god tier perk that it is to block pallets. They could have done that, and I think it would have been okay-ish. Maybe if it also blocked dropped pallets as well, so it just like gave you nothing within 32 meters, that could have been okay. Or if they made it like maybe within 20 meters of the killer when a generator pops, it blocks loops, or sorry, vaults, pallets, whatever. I think both of those would have been good options to make this a perk that people are interested in using. But this is one of those things where you sit there and you're like, man, behavior doesn't listen to their fan base because no one cares about the range. That was never the complaint. The complaint was that it was not a useful enough effect and it wasn't in a good area. So yeah, bad change. Slippery Meat, it's still shit. It gives you like a 4% boost, and I think you get a, what do you call it? Okay, it gets up to 8%. Meh, it's okay. Whatever, we'll never use it. This is another very questionable decision. This just, I feel like this is the behavior, like I said, behavior doesn't have any idea how their own fucking game works. Somebody please take it away from them because they can't manage it. Okay, sorry, I rant about them a lot, but it's stuff like this. Discordance now has a limited range of 96 meters. It triggers one loud noise for a generator when it's first marked. The aura of the generator remains visible as long as the conditions are fulfilled. From the time the conditions are no longer fulfilled, the aura remains for another 8 seconds. Okay, so there's a lot of problems with this. First off, this is just objectively a nerf. You're getting less information, you have limitations on the range of that information. So that's a bad idea. They're nerfing a perk that gives you information. It's not a broken amount of information. It's not like you get like 24/7 aura reading or something. but they're nerfing it nonetheless. No one complained about this perk. No one said this perk was overpowered. There's really no issue with this perk because you can know 2 people are on a generator. If you're fucking Huntress and you know 2 people are on a generator and you're on the other side of the map, it's like, yeah, let me go ahead and invest the 45 seconds that it'll take to get over there from this side of the map. And you know what? Maybe if I reacted instantly as soon as it popped on, I'll get there with 2 seconds remaining if I'm lucky. And that's assuming that no one touched the gen before the second person did. So yeah, I think that it's just a habit they have of like nerfing things on the killer side, and they very much are like very, very careful with any kind of source of value they give to killers, but they don't necessarily seem to mimic that with survivors a lot of the time, which we'll get to in a minute. So with this one, this is actually a nerf on a couple fronts. Some people may not be aware of the full scale of this nerf because they may not understand discordance as fully as maybe they should. Okay, so here's the thing that we know already. Discordance obviously has a limited range. It's a pretty big range, so I mean, not the end of the world, but it's still a shitty nerf that's not necessary. But also, here's the one that makes me think that it's really pretty bad. Let's see, where is it? It triggers 1 loud noise for the time. Where is it? Oh god, I can't read it apparently. These for a generator when it's first marked. Okay, so old discordance, people always thought tier 1 discordance was better because it just gave you constant updates as to if 2 people are touching it, which is annoying. Honestly, most people do find it annoying. Well, a lot of people do. I haven't pulled the masses, I'm afraid. But the thing that people don't know is that tier 3 discordance rings roughly every quarter of a generator. I think a generator is like 48 seconds. It rings every 12 seconds, so it's like 46 seconds. So you could sort of get an idea of how much work was being done to the gen. Just a rough idea, assuming that it's just 2 people. But and it's more efficient to use 2 people than 3, so usually that's a safe assumption. But now you can't do this. Now, not only do you not have the constant update and you are going to get an 8-second delay, but you also don't get the constant update of how much progress is being made. Like, you don't get the timer. You just have to guess or internally have the timer, which, I mean, you can have a decent internal timer, but having that ringing there to let you know every 12 seconds, okay, a quarter of this gen is done, was one of the things that gave discordance value that people didn't necessarily appreciate. Honestly, I think the reason for this change is simple. They knew that the tier system they had currently was shitty and that people didn't understand it clearly. I don't even know if they fully understood it when they implemented it that way. I really don't. Like, I question if that was their design or if they just fell into it. Mainly because all the questionable designs we've covered so far, and we're not even like halfway through. But I think simply put, they just wanted numbers to change. Okay, Hex Huntress Lullaby now only affects healing and repairing skill checks. So I guess this affected like DS or something. I don't know. This seems like a nerf to a perk that's probably one of the worst Hex perks in the game. So good job, champs. I mean, I feel like it really needed something else. Like maybe make the skill checks move faster. Maybe have a lingering effect after it's cleansed so that it's not like an unreliable perk that does something that's underwhelming. There's a lot of things this could have done that would have made it okay-ish, and they just chose to nerf it instead, so good job, Behavior. Let's see. Technician now prevents all generator explosions from missed skill checks. The generator loses an additional 5 or, okay, 3% progress. Okay, so 3%, I think you use 10, so that at base, so it's 13%. That's pretty bad. Okay, so here's how I feel about this. People always, and like I was in the Discord and a lot of them were saying, oh, well, now you got to have some sort of trade-off for that. And I guess maybe this is a good example of Behavior not being super biased to survivors, not wanting to give them anything of value without giving a downside when it's not necessary. So Technician blocking all generator explosions, that's cool. But the big downside of running Technician is that you're wasting a slot on a perk that basically just helps you if you make stupid mistakes. So the downside of running Technician is the fact that you will only at most have 3 useful perks in the match, because anyone who is decent at the game does not need to run Technician. So I feel like that is another example of behavior not understanding their own game. All right, so let's move on though. I feel like this is just the poor judgment patch all around. Pop goes the weasel, now lasts 45 seconds. Okay, another example of poor judgment. I'm pretty heavily against this one. So, and I know that I sound like a broken record here. So the idea is that, oh, we don't want the killers to have so much free time to wander around, maybe down a second survivor, and then use pop. Okay, it was never a good idea to do that unless you had like a super opportune situation. So I don't feel like this is a huge nerf. I just feel like this is a poorly defined nerf. But then it's like, even let's account for that. Let's say, oh, I find a survivor, I down them, and then I use pop. Okay, I still had to travel to that generator. I still had to take time out to go there and kick it and then come back. Who knows what's going to happen between now and then. It's not like a significant issue. No one, like, okay, so this makes me think that they're reacting to a complaint about pop when it first got the buff, when everyone was still getting used to it before they realized it wasn't necessarily god tier. It's like they're reacting to that, because this is another example, like with Discordance, of them nerfing a perk that nobody had a problem with. Like, I can't think of the last time I've heard the most survivor main of survivor mains complain about pop. But they're just arbitrarily nerfing it. It's like, and they don't give any kind of useful trait to it beyond that. Like, maybe give it like maybe the ability, if the survivor's hiding within 8-10 meters, that it'll make them scream. Something to rationalize the nerf, because it was never an overpowered perk. So if you're weakening it, you should probably give it something in return. But they don't do that. They just arbitrarily weaken it. It's stupid, but that's what we expect. We're gonna live forever. Now increases healing speed by 100% when healing survivor in the dying state. Players gain token when rescuing a survivor by stunning the killer with a pallet or blinding them with a flashlight, which is already a thing. God, just another thing that makes me think they don't understand their own game. You already got tokens from that. So that's not new. The players do not now gain. Players have always gained a token from that. I don't have any problem with the healing speed upgrade. I mean, I think that makes sense. Give it some sort of value. I don't know if I necessarily would, like, if it was in my hands, if I would have chosen that, but I'm not necessarily firmly against it, so whatever. Generator terminology changes, fine, whatever. I mean, I read over this. I don't really have much to say about it. Visual updates. Yeah, the McMillan map from what I saw looked pretty nice. Let's see. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about these. Don't care about that. Perk rarity. I think the perk rarity idea to have them all the same rarity, and like, well, if they're tier 3, I think that's a solid idea. Bugfist is good. Okay. All right, so yeah, that was, I don't even know how long I've been recording for 20 minutes. Just talking about how behavior doesn't understand their own game. And yeah, I stand by that. The only interesting thing I like, I'm interested in the pyramid head changes, because I'm like, it might be a little different. It might be fun to mess with the slightly different pyramid head. I wish they would have given him some useful add-ons, or some useful purple add-ons, I should say, because his purple add-ons are kind of stupid. And probably some better iridescence as well, because they're fairly forgettable also. But I mean, it'd be interesting to play a slightly altered version, I guess. The only perk change that I'm actually genuinely interested in is Trails of Torment, because it actually gives you permanent undetectable until you hit somebody. Could be okay. Not really sure. The rest of this is just a disappointment. It just shows you that behavior doesn't understand the problems people have with their game. They either nerf things that don't need nerf, which we saw with Thano, we saw with Discordance, we saw with Pop, or they fix aspects of their perks that don't address the actual problems people have with it, like you see with Cruel Limits. So, or Huntress Lullaby, which is another perk that got nerfed and didn't need it. I think the two good changes I can think of during this patch are definitely We're Gonna Live Forever having some sort of auxiliary effect. I think that's good. And Trails of Torment. Everything else is just further proof to me that they just don't understand the player base or the game they're making. And it's really disappointing. I I wish that there was more to be excited this mid-chapter. I didn't like the Blight's perks. I felt like only one of them was good and the rest were very forgettable and poorly made. Felix got some good perks, so I was happy with that patch. I'm probably going to put some time into Blight after I'm finished leveling up Clown. Clown's my current P350 target. But yeah, this patch just doesn't add much to be excited about. Very disappointing. So anyways, guys, yeah, I'll probably be taking a little bit of a break from playing DBD. I'm just not excited with the content they're offering. I don't know, I might do a couple streams if they have the event allowing you to unlock cosmetics, which they haven't mentioned it, and with how disappointing they've been lately, I kind of wonder if that'll be the case. I guess we'll see. Anyways, guys, I appreciate you being here, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.